Good day everyone, this is Nemesis, and in today's video we are going to take a look at how to create a starter build for the Dragonknight class in the Elder Scrolls Online. As I said in my previous build video, the Elder Scrolls Online build system is quite special and frankly quite misunderstood and unappreciated. There are a few key elements that make this game's build system stand out, and I will get to that in a few moments. The point I want to make is that I had to restructure the way I explain builds for my viewers, otherwise by the time we get to endgame builds, you either copy everything I do or say, or you'll end up watching about an hour and a half of explanations for different build variations for the same build. So I decided to make this initial starter build video as a foundation, and everything that comes after will be built on top of it. I will literally continue right where I left off. There is just so much potential for build diversity in this game. This is like a theory crafter's paradise, but at the same time there's even more ways to totally screw it up. So in this video, besides going through some of the basic mechanics of the game, I will do a step-by-step configuration of the Dragonknight starter build, basically show you how I build my character as you level up, explaining every decision that I make. I will also briefly go through the damage rotation and playstyle, while I demonstrate the build's effectiveness in different scenarios. This should cover the how to use it part, so that by the time we are finished, as in you use your 13 attribute points equivalent to level 14 and your 27 skill points, which is about how many you should have by the time you're level 14, you should be able to burst down any individual mob you might encounter in the world map while keeping it completely CC'd. You should also not only easily fight versus multiple opponents while in melee, but also provide really high AoE DPS when required. What I have said so far might not seem much until I tell you that with the same build, you can not only tank any and all encounters, but you can also AoE tank. Those of you who are scratching their heads right now probably haven't played the game, not as a tank anyway. But for those of you who did, you guys know what it means to go head first into a pack of 20 mobs only to have them ignore you completely, rush past you and go after the rest of your team. Fear not, I got you covered. Might have to make a separate video just to explain tanking. I heard some people saying that the Elder Scrolls Online doesn't even have tanks at all. I almost forgot. I suppose that if I say that with the same build you can go toe to toe with world bosses and kill them, that would be bragging, right? No special items, no healer. Yep, that's bragging. Last but not least, on top of all of that, I left a few of those 27 points to set you up for a really good economical start. Just like I said before, one word: hirelings. Really important, and I will tell you why later on in this video. For those of you who are in a hurry and for future reference, there will be a link in the description with the build, although if you want to actually understand how to properly tank without sacrificing your damage as a result, you might want to stay a while and listen. The Dragonknight starter build is the most complicated one out of all the 4 classes, and I will be using this video as a future reference for all my endgame builds. I'm not going to explain all these basic mechanics again. So, one of the most unique mechanics in the Elder Scrolls Online is that any class, beside the 3 class-only, class-specific skill paths, in the Dragonknight's case, as you can see, we have Ardent Flame, Draconic Power, and Earthen Heart. But besides that, any class can use any weapon and all the skills that are associated with that weapon, any armor, and any skills that are associated with that armor, and any guild or other environmental skills. So right off the bat we can see the amazing potential for build diversity and how you can totally screw it up. You can quite easily make a build that has a lot of redundant skills. You can have like 4 finisher type skills and no initiator, or let's say more armor enhancing spells than you need, since one of them already maxes out that stat. Having more than one is redundant, unless The second one has another function attached to it. It fulfills another purpose. Maybe uses a different resource pool. So in this case, you actually increase your overall effectiveness by having maxed out armor for a longer period of time because of smart play. So you see, my friends, the difference from getting it right and screwing it up is very small. Some would say that these things are insignificant. Yeah, wait till you get to PvP. This principle is further increased with the second sort of unique mechanic in this game, which is no skill cooldown at all. Seriously. Spam fest. Nah, I'm kidding. The thing is, there is absolutely no reason to get two spells that, for example, snare a target for a few seconds. It's not like when one of them is on cooldown, you get to use the other one. No, my friend, you can just spam the first one. And you save that precious skill slot. You put something in that slot that further increases the effectiveness of your desired playstyle. You synergize for maximum build effectiveness regardless of what you go for. Another game mechanic that makes this principle all the more crucial is overcharge. As you can see, some of the stats are orange and the rest of them are white. If you hold the mouse on it, it says when a stat is overcharged, it becomes increasingly difficult to raise it further. Consider changing your equipment, skills, attributes to distribute your points more evenly. So you can see we are encouraged towards build diversity from the start. Overcharge means that you have hit the soft cap or even the hard cap, which means that your stats from this point on will increase with a 50% handicap. Like if you add 100 more stamina to your already overcharged stamina, you will only actually benefit from 50 of that 100 you added. This is a really beautiful build system. This design is invaluable when it comes to control of the game balance. Having an overcharge function in the game means that the upper limit is set. There is no way to combine your skills, attribute, gears, buffs, or whatever else you can think of to go way out of hand in one particular direction, to go into the imbalanced zone. You can go wild with the build diversity, but you're still not going to be imba. Many MMOs have a cap on a few stats like crit chance or armor stats, or even in some cases cap on duration of buffs or debuffs. Definitely on CCs, there's always a cap to prevent over CCing, but the Elder Scrolls Online is the first one to take it to the max, and with good reason. Cap maximum potential and let us go wild. I see what you did there, and I approve. How such a small decision has such a great impact is a very elegant design. You can see now why I like it, and it gets even better. So let's listen to what was written in orange, because these bastards are onto something. You should know that I don't have any special items on me. Items are sort of irrelevant early game, yet I managed to overcharge one of my stats. And this is relevant when I tell you that, for example, in the Dragonknight's case, you can increase your health regeneration from skills if you're wearing heavy armor. And as you can see, I'm not wearing a lot of heavy armor on me. I was, like I said, unlucky with drops, yet I managed to overcharge not only my health regeneration, but also my maximum stamina, even though not all my items give out stamina. Here is where I will tell you that any armor type can increase any of the three primary attributes, as in magicka, stamina and health. So you shouldn't worry about maximizing out one stat and forsake all others. You will still be able to max out your stat of choice without sacrificing build diversity. You will actually increase in overall power by accepting build diversity and use it to create synergies not just between skills, but between attribute, skills and gear. So use at least one armor of each armor types. This equals build diversity, which equals opportunity for unique synergies that will continue to increase your overall power long after you overcharge one or two of your stats. Another reason to branch out, they sort of go hand in hand, the fourth sort of unique game mechanic, class specific skills and skill paths level as you gain experience, even if you don't use them. As long as you have the class specific skill on your hotbar, it will level up, and so will the class specific skill path it's associated with, which will allow you to unlock more skills, more diversity, blah blah blah. When it comes to weapon skills, you can still increase your weapon skill path even if you don't have any skill that belongs to the skill path on your hotbar. You just have to have the weapon equipped as you gain experience. That's how you get to unlock new skills for new weapon sets. You just use the weapon a bit and tada! So, class specific skill paths level a bit harder than weapon specific skill paths. Therefore, it's recommended to use at least one skill point in every class specific skill path in the beginning, so it starts leveling, so you will have an easier time in endgame. Weapon specific skills, just like class specific skills, can level even if you don't use them, as long as you have them on your hotbar. That means you don't really have to use a certain weapon set to level it up or level the skill up. This is just another thing that facilitates build diversity, which increases your overall power. Since you don't have to start over in another build, you're not weaker when testing out other builds, you can just use your favorite build to power up something else. Armor skills level as well, and just like class skills or weapon skills, you have to have them at least equipped. That is why I said use at least one armor of each type. You will be able to max out your favorite stat even so, don't worry about it. Speaking of that, in the Dragonknight's case, you should wear mostly heavy armor, because like I said, we will use that in synergy with some skills to overcharge our health regeneration. Last but not least, even if you manage all of the above to not be redundant and synergize everything, you still have to look at the big picture. Could I have chosen a different path, a different way to make my build that within my limitations I would be more effective? How can I get out the most of my 27 points, whatever that may be? These are the principles of build creation. They are valid now and they will remain valid forever, even when making endgame builds, because they are the direct result of the game mechanics. So if you take nothing else from me, maybe you don't like this particular build or you think you can do better, just keep in mind these things. They will help you make your own decision. They are far more important than to just copy paste me or see some numbers on screen. So if we cross the build principles that are a direct result of the game's mechanics with our personal needs as a gamer, we can finally start making our build. Basically, it's going to make itself. So we have Magicka stat, which increases our spell damage and Magicka pool, as in the number of spells we can cast, health, which is health, and stamina, which increases skill damage, weapon damage, and stamina pool, as in the number of skills we can use. What it doesn't say here, and this is really important, stamina also allows you to block, and blocking cuts all damage you take by at least 50%. That 50% damage you should have taken is deducted from your stamina pool. So now you see, the stamina stat is not only used when increasing damage with weapon and skills, essentially for being a great melee fighter, but also is invaluable when tanking. This clever build system design is what will facilitate a lot of interesting builds. This is the sole reason you can be a tank and a great melee fighter at the same time, if you play it smart at least. But that's where I come in. So we put everything into stamina. I know some people advise to put everything into health and max out our other stats with gear. That way you have access to build diversity via gear changing. You just get a new gear set, boom, you changed your build without resetting your attribute points. Nah, trust me guys, when you level up and change your gear every 4 to 8 hours, the last thing you want to do is have your damage crippled by gear. If you don't manage to find enough good gear to get your stamina up, you will not only do crap damage, but you will do crap damage fewer times, because stamina also dictates the amount of skills you can use. So by maxing out stamina, you will ensure that you always have enough damage and stamina pool. If you overcharge the stat, just get some gear with health. If not, you're still good. So now that we understand the game, we selected our attribute points, we can go ahead and assign our skill points. So let's see just how much we can do with 27 skill points on 5 skill slots while respecting the build principles, so that in the end we will have the best Dragonknight starter build possible. By the way, I wrote something on screen and you should keep that in mind. So, you will notice that in the beginning monsters are weak. You only need to slap them a few times with your hammer, maybe do a heavy auto attack and they die. The only issue here is that since you're in melee, they will slap you back. So we either get some defense to minimize the damage, or we do something even better. We further amplify our damage while providing defense by CCing. So we take a look at Earthen Heart, Stone Fist. Instant cast, do X amount of damage and knock down the target for 3 seconds. I say X amount because it scales with your stats, so your value will differ than mine. This spell will remain useful until the end of the game. It will later on act as an interrupter, which is a must for any decent melee fighter. So like I said, you see an enemy, you initiate with CC plus damage, and while being completely safe, because the mob is lying on his back, you do one heavy auto attack, and that's pretty much all there is to it. You might not realize this now, but I just set the tone for this build. Synergize everything we have at our disposal to create this defensive offensive playstyle. How do we know what to choose? Easy. We provide answers for the challenges we will come across. For example, you will soon encounter mobs that don't die in 2 hits, so they will hit you this time. Therefore, this would be a good time to get that reduced incoming damage. And if that form of damage reduction also comes with a bit of extra damage, all the better. So you see, we can burst down most individual mobs, and those that still remain and get to hit us, for a reduced amount of course, will die from the return damage. This return damage is really useful when fighting versus multiple as well. It's basically our first form of AoE DPS. Beside the fact that spiked armor will keep your armor stat overcharged from now on. Survivability and damage. Defensive offensive playstyle. We are looking really good right now, so this would be a good time to make that 1 skill point investment into our 3rd skill path, so that it starts leveling. For build diversity, for endgame, remember? Now, an experienced player will notice that even though this skill point is not really a waste because we invested it for build diversity, it's actually not a waste at all. This straight line uses magicka, does magicka damage, therefore it's mostly for a caster archetype, so you don't use it that much. But any tank needs at least 1 pull spell. Quite convenient, don't you think? God, I love this build system. Around this time you've reached level 4, you'll have quite a few fights versus multiple, and while spiked armor does keep you safe and does some AoE damage at the same time, it's not quite enough. We could do single target DPS combo with stun plus heavy attack, but that will quickly drain your magicka, and since we invest everything into stamina, it's problematic. Unless you take Cleave. Stamina based instant cast AoE, which does damage plus dot, damage over time, which stacks quite nicely with the return damage from spiked armor. So you see, we are starting to form a combo here. It's starting to look really good for 1 versus multiple as well. Around this time your 2-hand weapon skill path should have reached level 4, which means this just unlocked another answer to a problem you didn't know you had. You use Stone Fist plus heavy attack for single target, right? Well, not only does that no longer one-shot mobs, but since you're melee, you need to get to your target, which takes time. Time that could be better spent killing other mobs, like leveling faster. We need an initiator. Not an instant cast CC snare initiator that a sorcerer, a caster, would use. We don't need to kite. On the contrary, we need to get close. We need to close the gap. So, critical charge, instant cast, stamina based, gap closer that always crits. Remember I said something about bursting while keeping the victim completely CC'd? Well, It's starting. It's starting. For now, you can enjoy the gap closer plus damage and stun plus heavy attack. It's more than enough for any single target with just 2 skills and a heavy attack. Use everything you have at your disposal for maximum effectiveness. Going back to our AoE DPS, because it's falling behind our newfound single target burst. One issue that an experienced player would have noticed by now, and by the way this is not really an issue, it's actually something of a great mechanic. The Elder Scrolls Online devs have said that monsters will attack you differently based on how you attack them. Well, that is actually true. Something quite unique for an MMO. Monsters, especially casters, will start running away from you. They will reposition themselves as you try to melee them. That makes it a bit harder to cleave them properly. So we get Dark Talons, which is AoE damage, and an ally can synergize with it for great AoE damage, plus immobilize for 4 seconds, just enough to get 1 or 2 cleaves on the targets. I know what you're thinking right about now, and if you're not, you should be. Don't we have too many spells that use magicka? We invested everything into stamina. Weren't we a melee fighter and a tank, not a caster? Well, if you take a better look, we got an interrupt that we won't use that often. We got an armor that lasts quite a few seconds and returns damage versus multiple. And we got an AoE immobilize that you will also use only about 1 time every 1 versus multiple fight. These are not spammable spells. You can spam them, but you don't really have to. What you can spam, and you should spam, is cleave. That's where the real damage comes from, and it's a stamina based skill. In this build you will have just enough magicka to use these spells as you should use them. Once. By now you should have reached level 6, the time when you will encounter the first veteran mobs. And you think to yourself, well, I can't really burst down a veteran mob, I need to go toe to toe with it, tank it. So what now, Mr. Magic? A valid concern, not just for now but in general. There will be long boss fights in which you won't be able to keep your armor stat overcharged by spamming spiked armor. You'll deplete your magicka pool. So we need to find an alternative way to keep our armor stat overcharged for a longer period of time, since we are the ones that will be tanking. We are the ones that will take the hits to the face. So remember I said to bring a one-handed and a shield with you? Wrote it down like that? Well, put it on, because we need to get our puncture. Deals X amount of damage, reduces the target's armor by 40% for 12 seconds, and taunts the target for 15 seconds. This taunt is what will separate you as a tank from all the other tank wannabes out there. To every player that says, well, I'm tanky, I can tank, you should say, oh really? Can you take the boss off the healer, which will definitely aggro like crazy, and by doing so prevent the healer from dying, which will prevent you from dying, which will prevent a wipe? No? Okay, bye bye. So you see, I know that some of you might have thought we could have very well just gone full magicka until now, benefit from insane caster damage and still be tanking. True, tanky. But not a tank. A tank needs to keep his team alive, not just himself. If the team dies, so will he, eventually. So only this stamina based skill has the taunt you need. All this talk is not meant to distract you from the fact that puncture doesn't give you armor. Oh yeah, oh my god, the message, what are you saying? Yeah, not yet, not yet. So you better start poking with it. You will notice that even though you can't burst anymore, you are still doing alright, since you can spam this because of its low cost. And there's also the part with the reduced target's armor, which benefits not just you right now, but your entire team later on. You'll see. Soon you will be able to morph puncture into ransack, and there you have it, the armor I promised you. Now we can alternate this stamina based taunt with spiked armor to have your armor stat permanently overcharged no matter how long the fight is. And here's another reason why we went into stamina rather than magicka. In a dungeon we need to taunt more often than we need to overcharge our armor stat. Now the next skill we will choose will demonstrate my point about increasing your overall effectiveness even after overcharging your stats. We've hit the cap for armor, but not for damage mitigation. We did what we could to buff ourselves, time to debuff the enemy. With low slash, instant cast damage plus snare, just in case we need to take a break from combat and recover, plus reduce enemy weapon damage. At this point you don't really have to continue playing with one-hander and shield if you don't like it, just remember to keep low slash on your hotbar until it levels, because we will upgrade it later on for our tank mode. You will be around level 7-8 when you will first encounter some difficulties when fighting versus multiple, or some veterans. It will perhaps make you question your ability to be a tank. Maybe you will hear some people say, "Hate to say I told you so, you can't go balls first into a pack of mobs. There are no tanks in the Elder Scrolls Online." Oh my god, all is lost, I'm gonna die! Literally. Allow me to disagree. Just by keeping the Stone Fist spell on your hotbar, we should have managed to increase our Earthen Heart skill path to level 12 by now. That can mean only one thing: magma armor. Caps incoming damage of 3% max health for 12 seconds, while nearby enemies take X amount of damage every second. This will literally make you immortal for 12 seconds. Seriously. All the damage you could possibly take will not go over what you can normally regenerate with your health regeneration stat. Not even when being attacked by multiple targets. Because in this case, 5 mobs would do more than one boss, because 5 targets hitting you for 3% is more than one boss hitting you for 3%. But wait, there's more! Not only are you immortal, but also the AoE damage you push out will stack with the return damage from spiked armor, with the damage from cleave, and with the damage from dark talons, which will actually ensure that both cleave and magma armor get to do their damage. Mobilize, remember? So now you finally see how everything starts to come together. This AoE combo that we have created from 4 different skills that use 3 separate resource pools will seem even more amazing after you will realize that because of the dual nature of these skills and the way we synergize them together, they will hold a crucial part both when doing AoE DPS and when tanking. I would say that our AoE DPS is now finished, but there is one last thing we have to do. Cleave morphed into carve. With this latest addition, the more damage you will do, the more damage you will do. That was not a double take. Seriously, the more monsters that are around you, the more targets are hit by spiked armor return damage and carve. And as a result, the more often you get to use your magma armor. So quite literally, the more monsters are around you, the stronger you become. Your AoE DPS is now complete. You may ask now, what about AoE tanking? Patience. We are getting there. By the time you'll get to your first dungeon, you shall have it. In fact, we will take the first step towards that right now. But first, a few words of wisdom. There is no AoE taunt, but you can tank for your team AoE. You can initiate first, you will survive obviously, even take aggro for a little while, but like I said, healers aggro like crazy in this game, followed closely by DPSers. So even though you initiate it first, that will soon make absolutely no difference. So here's the catch. Monsters don't have to necessarily hit you per se. They simply must not hit your team. And if they do manage to hit, the damage they do should be minimized, either reduced or compensated, or both. So we are going to go ahead and morph Dark Talons into Choking Talons. This spell will now no longer be used primarily for doing AoE DPS. It will instead serve as a combo purpose, both when ensuring the damage from car spam, spiked armor and magma armor, and preventing and mitigating the damage being done to your team. Do you see where I'm going with this? Around level 9 you will be getting closer to finishing that can't believe this is real single target burst combo while CCing the monster. So we morph critical charge into critical rush, deal bonus damage based on the distance traveled. No further explanation needed here. The burst combo is almost finished, just need to add one more CC, a little bit more damage. Uppercut, stamina based skill. 1 second cast time, damage, plus stun, plus knockback. Knockback synergizes well if we had the gap closer that does damage based on the distance traveled. Right then, our single target burst combo is now complete, and I will display it in all its glory once we reach the damage rotation playstyle part in this video. You should be around level 10-11 by now, and you already have your single target burst finished and your AoE damage finished. All that is left now is to finish our tanking and AoE tanking capabilities. If you listen to me and kept low slash on your hotbar every now and then, you should have leveled it by now, and we morph it into deep slash. Now we reduce all damage the enemy does, not just weapon damage. This is, like I said, increase your survivability, your overall effectiveness, even after you overcharge your armor stat. Now you might remember I showed how stamina and blocking works, and I said at least 50% damage reduction. You might have even noticed that it was more than 50%, which is awesome, but I never explained how. Nothing too complicated, just get ourselves some passives. We have Fortress, reduce cost of blocking by 50% and reduce cost of one-hander and shield based abilities by 5%. Pretty self-explanatory. Sword and Board, increase weapon damage by 3% and block mitigation by 10%. Iron Skin, block an additional 5 damage. And of course, since we are a tank, we need more armor and magic resistance, so we get Resolve. And we finish up our overcharge health regeneration stat with Constitution. Our tank is not yet finished because it's missing 2 more key ingredients. I will explain this in more detail in another video. It has to do with party synergy and resource management across the board. But for now, let's just say that if you, as a tank, are a little bit more self-sustaining, besides being hard as a rock, if you can self-heal maybe a little bit, you can give the healer an easier time. Maybe alternate between your own sustained self-heal and his healing capabilities, so that he never runs out of magicka, and neither do you. You see, it's a team effort. Besides, you might be hard as a rock, but you still take damage, however small that might be. Therefore, some self-healing will go a long way when soloing stuff. Old bosses, veterans, you know. So we take Battle Roar. When activating your ultimate ability, restore health, magicka, stamina. Amount restored increased by 35% of your ultimate cost. So as you go into your immortal mode, which you will do quite often because the more you do AoE DPS with Carve, the faster your ultimate ability recharges, you also restore yourself, and not just HP, everything, even magicka. You are becoming self-sustaining. The magicka you will now gain could not have come at a better time, since you just wasted a bit of it for your other self-sustain. If we get Dragon Blood, instant cast, restore 30% of missing health and increase health regeneration by 40% for 20 seconds, I actually think I'll drop some of that extra health regeneration we have to get some stamina regeneration instead. See what I did there? See what I did there? So with this final piece of the puzzle, your tank mode is now complete. The only thing still missing in this build are the AoE tanking capabilities I advertised in the beginning. So just to recap, So far we established our AoE DPS combo. We also saw that the more monsters are around us, the stronger we become, both in terms of damage and survivability because of Carve. How choking talents has a double use, not only does AoE DPS and synergy for a lot more AoE DPS, but also immobilizes and reduces enemy damage, so that the monsters remain within the range of Carve and Magma armor, and at the same time are unable to go after your team. And even after they do escape, they do reduce damage. You see, most of our skills and spells have a double use, if not triple. You also might remember I said that monster packs don't really have to hit you, they just have to not hit your team. And if they do manage to damage them, the damage should be mitigated or compensated, or both. Magma armor morphed into magma shell. Allies may activate a synergy, granting them a powerful damage shield. Only about 85% of their maximum health pool. So now, the more monsters are around you, the stronger your entire team becomes. Your team might have overcharged armor stats, might receive maximum healing, literally evaporating the healer's magicka pool, and yet you can add something even more to that. Between 85% extra health and 50% reduce all incoming damage, whatever chance your team had before, it just got doubled. And the most beautiful part of all in this, we did not sacrifice any damage to obtain this. In fact, the more monsters surround you, the better you carve, the faster you recharge your magma shell, the stronger you all become. I believe a slow clap is in order. This is so satisfying. Now you might be tempted to go like this all the time, even at bosses. Nah, bad idea. But the Nemesis, you don't understand, we got the damage. No, my friend. No. This form of damage only shines when it's used on a lot of mobs at the same time. And I do mean a lot. Besides, remember what I told you about the difference between a tank wannabe and a proper tank? Otherwise the boss will just run after the healer and the healer will stop healing and make a run for it, and before you know it, everyone is dead. Besides, what do you think you're gonna do? Burst down the boss with your two-hand weapon? This build doesn't have sustained single target DPS. I did not give it sustained single target DPS because the only time sustained DPS matter is also the time when people will expect you to tank. Besides, the armor reduction you provide while taunting is enough of a DPS boost for your team, it will more than compensate. At last, everything makes sense. Everything has fallen into place perfectly. This is the best Dragonknight starter build possible. I will do a slow clap again, but I got one last thing for you. You remember I said something about a good economical start? You might have also noticed we only use 23 out of our 27 skill points that are available to us. The last 4 skill points I will use to get the hirelings. What you should know about the hirelings is that the benefits they provide are not retroactive, which means that if you get them in a few days, a few months, maybe a year, no one will knock on your door saying that your caravan of goods has arrived. The sooner you get them, the sooner you start getting stuff. Free stuff. You might think, is it really that good of an investment? Well, my friend, not only do we have everything we need in this build and some extra 4 skill points, so this doesn't cripple you at all, but also, yeah, they're just that good. Let me show you a small preview of what it means to have them. This is what you would lose if you don't have them. And I got this in what, like 2 weeks into the game? just how much would you lose after a year? Think about that for a moment. So before we go into the damage rotation and playstyle, I would like us to take a moment and appreciate just how much you can accomplish with just 27 skill points. I've been gaming for over 15 years, but this is the first time I met a build system which actually allows a build like this to be created. Do you see why I was so excited? The Elder Scrolls Online build system is one of the most underrated, in fact the entire game is one of the most underrated MMORPGs I have ever seen. I'm definitely going to make a video where I talk just about these things, because anyway, you now have a really solid foundation, but most importantly, you understand it. You can safely continue down this path and make your own decisions. And of course, there are still many unique synergies to be explained, many ways to make insane builds toward endgame, and even more ways to screw them up. So for me, there's still a lot to look forward to. But before I end this video, let's take a quick look at the damage rotation and playstyle. There are a few things I have to say there as well. So, build damage rotation and playstyle. I'm going to teach you guys a small trick here, how you can cut a little bit of the animation delay by sneaking in some auto attacks, like a two-hand light attack, in between spells or skill sequences. You'll see. I spent quite some time trying to find some suitable monsters so that I can demonstrate the single target burst combo in all its glory. I mostly overkill the monsters at my level, so eventually I just went to a higher level zone so I can show it, and because of the exploration XP I accumulated by the time I got there, I leveled. I so wanted to showcase everything before level 15 because it would prove my point better, but it didn't turn out as I planned. So I decided to do some other dungeons, maybe I get some better footage for the preview in this video. That's why the footage you see in the preview has a level 15 character in it. Rest assured, I didn't use anything extra than what I said in this video. So finally found my monster. Time to show the single target burst combo while keeping the monster completely CC'd. Like I said, we sneak in some auto attacks in between skill sequences to cut the animation delay a little bit, therefore maximizing our DPS. So we use Critical Rush as a gap closing initiator combined with a two-hand auto attack, then Stone Fist for damage and stun or interrupt depending on the case, and two-hand auto attack, plus uppercut for damage and knockback. At this point you can basically redo the entire combo since you're exactly where you started. As long as your resource pools don't get depleted, you can keep doing this burst CC combo. But no normal monster is going to survive it anyway, so nah. When it comes to AoE DPS and AoE tanking, we know we created the build in such a way that most of the skills have a double use, so they serve us really well, both when doing AoE DPS and when tanking for AoE. So we initiate with spiked armor for some AoE return damage and the survivability you'll need to withstand the incoming melee damage from multiple opponents. On top of that, we stack some more damage with Choking Talons. That also gives the allies a chance to synergize with it for a lot of AoE damage. Choking Talons also does an AoE damage reduction debuff, so that all monsters hit for 50% less, and the same spell immobilizes the enemies, which prevents them from going after your team and keeps them in range of your next skill, which is Carve. Stamina based AoE damage plus AoE dot, plus recharges your ultimate faster. Basically, the more monsters are around you and the more you spam Carve, which you can since we invested everything into stamina, the faster your Magma Shell recharges. You'll be able to use it even twice in the same fight. Magma Shell caps all incoming damage at 3% and does some AoE damage that stacks with the return damage from Spiked Armor, with the damage from Choking Talons and with the damage from Carve. Plus, allies can synergize with it to receive a damage shield for 85% of their max health, which goes hand in hand with the 50% damage reduction the monsters have at this point. So, perfect. For soloing world bosses or tanking in dungeon, I divided the playstyle into two phases. It's basically the normal mode and the recovery phase if and when you need it. So basically, when you taunt, when needed with Ransack, you overcharge your own armor stat and increase the damage the boss will take by 50%. You alternate for survivability between ransack and spiked armor, so that you don't deplete your stamina pool, so that you can always stand if needed. You use deep slash for some extra damage mitigation on top of your overcharge armor stat if you need to. And you can interrupt plus damage with stone fist if needed. And of course, you block when needed. As you take damage when you solo, or in a dungeon when you see the healer can keep up, or he needs some time out, you go into your recovery mode, which is Dragon Blood for instant heal plus increased regeneration, followed closely by Magma Shell, which recovers stamina, magicka, and health, and makes you immortal for 12 seconds. So this was basically everything you needed to know to get you started as a Dragonknight in the Elder Scrolls Online. I spent a really long time making this video. The build was easy, builds come natural to me, but making the video, that's the hard part. But I think it was worth it. I call this the best Dragonknight starter build possible, not for the damage per se, but for the fact that you can do this amount of damage and tank any and all instances, and AoE tank. In this video I introduced a little bit of the notion of AoE tanking. You don't have AoE taunt in this game, so people have no idea how to tank. People blame the mechanics. I tried it, I went through the build system, I played all the classes, the mechanics are fine. People didn't get how to use them yet. So if there was something faulty with the game, you guys know I would figure it out. But no, there's something wonderful with the game. If I had more time and I wouldn't be so tired, I would talk more about this, but I'm going to make a separate video in which I discuss this. So feel free to comment, rate, subscribe, share, ask questions. I didn't spend a lot of time saying what you shouldn't choose, because that would make like a 10-hour long video. I just focused on how to make the best Dragonknight starter build possible. And if you follow my steps, you not only totally dominate, but you also understand why and how you did it, so you can make your own decisions in the future. So in the description below you will find some relevant information, like a quick link to this build, a timetable with timestamps, similar builds for other classes, and I will put upcoming builds, endgame builds for the same class. So I'm going to go back to Guild Wars for a little while to do some work there, and when I come back I will start publishing endgame builds for the Elder Scrolls Online, and a lot more footage. You guys are going to love it. Just need to eat something and sleep for a week, and then I'm good. So until next time, enjoy your gaming, have a great day.